Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 164 of the podcast. In this episode, I talk with my friend David Maddron about a really hard topic. We talk about helping families navigate the loss of a child. And you're going to hear from David and his personal story about when they lost their son and all that went through in the church, how they surrounded them, the things that maybe the church did right, the things that maybe the church did wrong. And this is not something any of us ever want to deal with. Obviously, it's just as a parent, especially, but even before I had kids, it's just hard. It's just hard. But as church leaders, as friends, as family members, as pastors, we want to be there to help support and help families navigate this and their grief and all of that. And I think this conversation with David will be helpful for that. It was helpful for me, for sure. And so this isn't, a podcast or like most of the podcasts that we have because it's deeply personal. It's hard. It's a hard conversation, even though I've already known a lot of this story from knowing David, having this conversation here again on the podcast, and even he, talking through it, you'll hear, gets choked up at probably at a point as we talked afterwards that surprised him. But I thought it was really a really helpful podcast for pastors, for ministers, because we want to do well. We want to do our part in the best way we can and not do the wrong things, not make things worse, but be the best help we can with families who are navigating loss. And so as you listen to this interview, listen to what he talks about and some of the learnings that they had. And because, obviously as a pastor, a kid's pastor himself, he understands this personally and what it meant for their family, but then how to help other parents who have navigated this. So I hope you'll listen to this and take in what he talks about and maybe have that influence your leadership and even your volunteers and people in your church and all of that to help families navigate loss better. As usual, you can get notes and links and some of the things that David mentions at nickblevins.com/episode 164. But let's jump in right now and listen to my conversation with David Maddron about helping families navigate the loss of a child. Today I'm talking with Dave Maddron. Welcome to the podcast, Dave.
Thank you, Nick. Glad to be on. Been a long-time listener and a big fan of what you're doing.
Yeah, it's good to have friends on the podcast and learn, talk a little bit about ministry and kind of, have the same kinds of conversations we have when we're together at conferences or whatever. So that's always fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Now, before we jump in, tell us about you, your family, and your church.
Well, I've been in children's ministry full time for 16 years now. So I would consider myself a grizzled veteran. Have served on staff at 3 churches now in the capacity of children's pastor. I've done some student ministry work as well, previous to doing children's ministry. So yeah, have been involved in ministry itself for over 20 years in some staff capacity. I have been married for 15 years. Wife and I have been together 16 years this month, and blessed to have 5 children. Our oldest 3 are adopted, and then we have 2 biological children. One of which we will speak quite a bit about on this particular episode. And then I am at a multi-site church just outside of Dallas, Texas. First time doing the multi-site thing, and it's been different to just being at a single campus. And so the Lord has definitely been stretching me quite a bit and helping me learn, how this whole multi-site thing works and partnering with your other campuses and those kind of things. So it's been a fun adventure so far.
Yeah. And you lead at one of the locations of the multi-site?
I do. I'm the children's pastor at our Kaufman campus, We have 3 other campuses, one in Forney, one in Sunnyvale, and one in Rockwall, and we're all just east of downtown Dallas. We're about 30 minutes southeast or so, and we are the most rural of all 4 of our campuses. The other 3 campuses I would consider definitely more suburban as opposed to ours. We definitely have more of a rural country feel to it. All
right. Well, we're going to talk about a hard topic today, the hardest topic we've ever talked about on this podcast, and that's the loss of a child. And we're going to talk about, as a church, how can we help? How can we help in that moment? And for you, it's personal. You're a leader, but this is personal for you. So tell us your story, and then we'll dive in more into this topic.
Yeah, so as I mentioned there in the intro, we have 5 children. Our oldest 3 are adopted, and they are just like us and look just like us in so many ways. I mean, it is absolutely crazy. So when we tell folks that our oldest 3 kids are adopted, they're like, "You're a liar." And we're like, "I wish I was." But so, just see how the Lord has put those 3 kids into our lives has been amazing and given us the opportunity to become parents. We struggled, like a lot of adoptive families have struggled with fertility for a number of years. Went to a lot of different specialists in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and every one of them kept pointing us to IVF, doing in vitro fertilization and, doing surgeries and those kind of things. And we just never had peace about that. We felt like God wanted to tell a different story in our lives. So we politely told each doctor, "Thank you for your time, but that's just not the route that we want to take." And we are trusting God to do something different and to tell a different story. So after a while, we ended up going the adoption route. We were just really, from early on in our marriage, just really family focused. And so we did the trainings, those kind of things, adopted our oldest son. Matter of fact, I was sharing with some folks today. Today's the 9-year anniversary that our oldest son was placed with us in our home. So today specifically is really kind of a special day for us. We got placed with him and got placed with 2 others so Andrew's our oldest. He was placed with us, and then almost 2 years later, we received Autumn and Adam, and they are biological brother and sister, no relation to Andrew. And at the time of being placed with Autumn and Adam, my wife found out she was pregnant. And we're like, "Oh, what just happened?" Because we'd always just been told that without medical intervention, that path would not be open for us. So right away we're like a little confused, but we're thankful, rejoiceful that the Lord was taking us down that path. Her pregnancy was very rough. She spent more time in the hospital than she spent out. She ended up delivering at 30 weeks to our first biological child, Asher Duke. And he spent 48 days in a NICU in downtown Dallas just due to premature birth. And so we got to bring him home in early May of 2014. He was born March 12th, 2014. Got to bring him home early May, or late April, early May, something like that. And he spent about another month and a half with us before he ended up passing away from complications of premature birth. And those complications, none of us were made aware of. His primary pediatrician, had just seen him the week before. Hey, he sounded great. There's nothing to be alarmed about. Everything's really good. And then one Tuesday morning, June 24th. We woke up ready to start the day, and I'd left with my little girl, and my wife was at home with the baby, and she'd gone to like change out some laundry or something, and came back and found him not breathing. Got him rushed over to the hospital that we have here in Kaufman, and then they ended up flying him into Children's Hospital in Dallas. And they worked on him and worked on him and worked on him for hours. Doctor came in and told us, here's your options. You've got two of them. He's basically on life support, and here is what's happening because he is on life support. He was having a lot of seizures and those kind of things just from the swelling of his brain due to the lack of oxygen. And so we could keep him on life support as long as you want, but just know that these are kind of the repercussions of that, or you could take him off and he will pass away peacefully. And that was, just in the moment was an absolute gut shot. Like, so many folks do at different points in life, I would imagine. We have that moment where we question God and ask why. Mm-hmm. I think for us it was more out of confusion. Why is this the road you're taking us down? But we ended up making the decision to pull him off of life support, and it wasn't fair for us to rob him of what he was created for, and we believe that is eternity in heaven with our Lord. And so even in that moment, telling the doctor, hey, we'd like for you to pull him off life support, we just felt this incredible peace, even in that hardest moment of our life. At that time, just an incredible peace to move forward with that. And so, get home, have lots of family over, and my little girl's outside playing, and it starts raining. And it started off a really nice day. So it ended up raining that afternoon, and she comes running in, Mom, Dad, you need to come outside. Asher's smiling at us. And so we run outside, and it was, Nick, the most beautiful double rainbow I've ever seen, right across the street from my in-laws' house. They have a big 150-acre pasture that keep cattle on and those kind of things, and just this huge double rainbow in the sky. In that moment, we just knew, hey, we did the right thing, but that God's got a bigger plan for this. So out of that, we developed a ministry called Asher's Rainbow, in which we send Bibles all around the world in His name, sharing God's promises, based out of Genesis. And we've been blessed to reach 6 continents with God's word in native languages. We lack the continent of Antarctica. So if any of your listeners have contacts in Antarctica that need a Bible, we would love the opportunity on behalf of Asher's Rainbow to send them a Bible. One of the neat things that happened at his funeral is his nurse, his NICU nurse, she came to know Jesus. She prayed to receive Jesus as her Lord and Savior that morning. And, for us, the question went from why me, why us, God, to why not. That was, as I was preaching his message, preaching the funeral message, that was the question that I opened up with, why not us? Why not me? There's nothing that set me apart or set Asher apart from anybody else. We're not we're not exempt from pain or hard times. So through that, over the years, we've just seen the Lord do an incredible work and opened up some really neat opportunities for us to share our story and to help partner with churches to help embrace families who have gone through similar things.
Yeah, and I don't know if before that you, as a leader, had to help another family in the church navigate the loss of a child, but you got to experience that at the church, and it wasn't the church you're in now. But I'm wondering how during that terribly difficult time, how did your church help? Were there things, because when things like this happen, people don't know what to say or do. So were there things that your church did that helped that would be good for leaders to know and think about? Were there things that didn't help? And you would say, what, I wish that had been done differently.
Sure. Yeah, that's been one of the neat things that we've been able to take away from living that experience. Of course, that day we had just probably hundreds of folks come through the house, bringing food, bringing toiletries, just making sure, all of our needs were met in the immediate. We had folks mowing grass and, helping with laundry, just all of these things. Our kids were little at the time. Matter of fact, our oldest son, Andrew, was away at summer camp when this had happened. So we had, one of our church members had gone with us to that summer camp to have that conversation with Andrew, that is his baby brother that he had been praying for was gone. And, so that was definitely some of the neat things. Unfortunately, it wasn't something that our church at the time had a lot of experience in. We've had families in the community that had lost infants, toddlers, children, but a lot of them were not closely connected to our church. So this was, at the time for our church, its first big kind of thing, relatively speaking, in which you're dealing with the loss of basically a newborn child in a lot of ways because of where he was developmentally. So the things we took from that, simply people will say a lot of dumb things, a lot of hurtful things that are not intended. That their intent isn't there to hurt, but they just don't know what to say. And they want to say something. They want to help. They want to let you know. They wanted to let us know that they were praying for us, that they were hurting for us, that in their minds they had experienced a hurt and a loss as impactful as ours was. But truth be told, in our eyes, it wasn't as impactful as losing a baby. So, ministry leaders, I would just tell you, just know that a lot of things will be said in those moments that are going to be hurtful to those families, and it's not intentional. It's just that people don't really know how to respond. They don't know what to say in those moments because it's such a somber moment and it's such a somber time in the life of that family. I would say, if you are, ministry leader, if you've got a group of 3 or 4 families that you can surround that grieving family with, that are going to be there to just pray with them, to help meet physical, spiritual, emotional needs, surround them with those 2, 3, 4 families, because it's going to be that bond and those families that will help in a lot of ways, help through some of those early days and weeks and months, as different things come up, such as birthdays, holidays, the anniversary of the death, and all of those little earmarks that stick out to us, like a birthday would, like baby's first Christmas, or this or that. So find a small community of people, and it may be folks who have walked that path, because those folks know more than anybody what they needed in the moment, and what might be best when we don't know what we need in that moment.
That's good. When you think about, like what you said, that people said hurtful things, but not intentionally, dumb things. And I think I think everybody understands that, and maybe has even experienced that. What would you say? I mean, is there something you would say to church leaders listening to help families navigate loss better? Is it preparing them in advance for moments like that? I think that's part of it. Is nobody, even sometimes when you work for a church, a lot of times nobody talks you through, hey, this is what a family's experiencing, when they're navigating a loss, and here's what they don't need to hear, here's what they do need to hear. And it's mostly, I feel like it's mostly don't say much. But, there are a lot of times nobody has said that, you know what I mean? And so what would you say to church leaders if they want to not only themselves be better at this, but maybe even help their church be better at this?
Sure. Yeah. A couple of things. First, be just a really good listener. I think a lot of us as ministry leaders and pastors, we feel like, we need to interject some big divine bit of wisdom. And sometimes the biggest plot of wisdom we can interject is silence, and just being open ears, and helping that family know that it is okay to be mad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be depressed. It is, all of these myriad of emotions that those families feel and are going through over the different stages of grief, that those things are okay. But don't get stuck there. Don't find yourself in a rut. So there's a couple of programs that I highly recommend churches get involved with to help grieving families. One of them is Grief Share, and that is just a really neat program. They have it for both adults and children, and just when that adult or that couple is ready to walk that journey of healing and taking some next steps and dealing with the grief, having a program like that, and having some leaders in place that aren't just facilitators, but have gone through it, have experienced grief on the side that we're experiencing on. So that'd be one thing. And another thing, kind of a newer program that my wife and I have been privileged to help lead out in some churches, and have found great help in ourselves, is a program that the folks at Orange have helped put together. Kenny Conley being one of them. He and his wife kind of put this together. It's a program called Made Known, and it's simply it's almost formatted as a church service, but it gives families the opportunity, gives them space, gives them a place to celebrate the life of that child that maybe miscarried, or that infant that passed away early on for whatever reason. And that resource has just been really, really incredible.
Can you, because I know you helped at least one church, maybe multiple churches use this, not even necessarily at your own church. Can you walk us a little bit through what that looked like and how you helped them, and then how did it go? Like, I'm sure they did it for their church. I don't know if they reached out to the community too, but tell us a little bit about how that event worked, how you helped, and then what was it like?
Yeah, so we, some of the leadership at Orange knew about our story and our desire to just come alongside and help families and help churches and ministry leaders walk through infant death, walk through the seasons of infertility, walk through miscarriages, those kind of things. So we were put in touch with a ministry leader in Kansas. We lived in a suburb of Kansas City, Missouri at the time. And so we were put in touch with a church over in the Overland Park, Kansas area, which wasn't very far from us, that was wanting to lead out a service for their community, for their church. And so what we did is, met with that leader, took that made known, the packaging, the content, those kind of things, and began to kind of map out what an evening or what a day of this looks like in their context. One of the neat things about the resources is it gives things for, a pastor to say, for worship leaders, kind of really planned it. They planned it out really well. And so we just kind of strategically looked, okay, here's what the content is. How do you want to use the content? Who is your target audience? Do you already have some folks pulled in? Who's kind of your keynote speaker or speakers? This one church, they ended up having a platform and did kind of a Q&A of what that loss looked like in each of their situations. So, there was some flexibility there of what it ended up looking like. So on the front end, we just helped walk them through it, through that resource. And then come the day of the event, we were there as panel speakers, but we were also there as participants. And so, they had a part in the service where they had memory stones that you could write your loved one's name on. One of the things about miscarriages that Made Known was really intentional about was giving them space to give that child a name, because it's something that's been so taboo and something just swept under the carpet and not really highlighted a whole lot. But it's child loss, and so that was an opportunity for a lot of families to make that loss that much more personal, and to say that their child, and they may not have known if it was a boy or a girl, but that child had an identity. And so just helping walk them through that. And after the event was over, having some follow-up with those leaders, what they ended up having were a bunch of people that were there that were not a part of their church, but because of their intentionality and saying, hey, we just want to come alongside you and love you and help walk with you through this process, they ended up getting plugged in there. And, just a lot of victories came from that, and a lot of community was experienced. And, it's definitely a program that I would strongly suggest, churches look at doing once a year for their communities.
Mm-hmm. What was it like for you all once you were, like you said, you were a panel speaker, so there was that side of it, but you were a participant. And what was it like for you and your wife?
I was one of probably 6 or 7 guys that participated, which was a little heartbreaking for me and probably for a lot of wives. but even though at that point we were probably 3 years post death of our son, it still helped mend some wounds that were open, and gave me some peace of knowing, hey, his life mattered, even though his start time and finish time of life was so short. It mattered. It was impactful, and God is still using the remnants of his life to make a difference, not only in our own lives, but literally around the world. So it brought more peace to me, that even though it hurts sometimes, and I still find myself emotional from time to time, that he's carrying out God's purpose. Even in his death, Asher is carrying out God's purpose.
Is there anything else you'd add to, help church leaders as they help families navigate loss?
Yeah, just be sensitive. Just be sensitive in those moments. Give families room. Give them space to cry, to yell, to be angry with God. Give them space. Give them a voice. But don't overuse your voice, and don't overuse your influence, because it's such a trying time, and there is so much more tension brought to that relationship between husband and wife, or whatever that ends up looking like. Just give families space, love them, keep them close, but give them space to grieve, and help them grieve in a healthy manner, and help them mend in a healthy manner.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Well, thanks for being willing to come on the podcast and talk about this. And I can't imagine how hard that is. I know you want to do that. You want to help leaders. You want to help churches. You want to help families, for sure. And so we appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with us, and the Made Known thing and what churches are doing there. That's a really good thing.
Yeah. Well, Nick, I certainly appreciate it. It's one of those things that churches don't spend a lot of time talking about. And if we can just give it a moment and time to speak about, we are able to reach into a community of people who are hurting, and they're looking for a way to heal, and the church should be the path, in my opinion, that they go to find that healing. So thank you for giving us time to be able to talk about this today, and to help ministry leaders navigate something that seminary doesn't teach us. We don't learn that. There's not a seminary class on funerals, or dealing with grief outside of a psychology class or something like that. And so thank you for giving us some time on this today.
You bet. How can people connect with you? Learn about Asher's Rainbow, your blog, all that stuff.
Sure. You can visit Asher's Rainbow. We've got a website. We're on social media. We've got a video on YouTube, those kind of things. That website is ashersrainbow.org. Again, if you've got contacts, or if there's a way that we can partner with you or your ministry to provide Bibles, man, we would love to do that. If your church is going on a mission trip and wants to provide some Bibles in native languages, please reach out to us. Give us the opportunity to be able to partner with y'all on that. We would absolutely love to do that. And also, I've got my own website, Kids Men Talk, KIDSMINTALK, kidsmentalk.com. Got a podcast. We'll probably share some excerpts from this on a future podcast pretty soon, but would love to connect with you through that as well. And I'm on social media at Maddron on Twitter, Instagram, those kind of things. Would love to connect with leaders and help them navigate such a sensitive topic.
Yeah. Well, love what you're doing and your faith in the midst of all that. So appreciate that. And so look up to that. And I love how you're helping churches and families and leaders and how you're doing it even in this interview. So thanks for coming on and being with us.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate you, man.
Well, I'm so thankful for David and his willingness to share and be vulnerable and open and such a tragic thing. And he was willing to come on and talk about that to help me, to help you, help others, to help other families, because maybe this has not been something that you've had to deal with in ministry. It has for me and for our church, and it probably will be, unfortunately. I just talked with a good friend this week where, a different kind of thing happened. The kid was older, but it's the kind of things that we hope never happen, but they do. And we want to minister to families and be there for them in the midst of that. So I'm thankful for David and his time here talking with us and sharing those things. And obviously, as you could tell, it's hard. It's hard. And I just appreciate their faith and how they're using this to help other people, the work they're doing, all of that. I just love that. Asher's Rainbow is just an amazing ministry, what they're doing with that, providing Bibles to kids all around the world. Would encourage you to check that out at ashersrainbow.org. And when I hear, when I listen to him and we talk through that whole thing, I thought about, and we even talked about there, as you heard, how can we train people, what to say, what not to say, not just staff, certainly staff, but even volunteers. I think that is really important to help them, again, help families navigate loss and not be hurtful, during that time, but instead to be helpful. I think we could find people who've been there before. We may need somebody like David and his wife in our church who has been there, and we can lean into them to help other families walk through this the same way Dave and his wife do. And he talked about the Made Known resource from Orange, and that is a great resource. And you all know from listening that Kenny Connolly is a good friend and love what he and Sarah did to help put that together along with the team at Orange. And it's just an amazing resource to help families in this way. So those are some things I think about that all of us can do coming out of this interview as we try to help families who navigate loss. So again, I'm so thankful for David, so amazed by his faith and love the ministry with Asher's Rainbow and all of that. Hopefully we'll have David back on the podcast again in the future. And because there's so much more that he could talk about that would be helpful to us. But again, I'm just happy he came on to talk about this when it's just so hard. But it's part of the ministry, part of the ministry they want to help other people with Asher's Rainbow and in their own church and ministries and with other leaders too. And so check the show notes if you want to get links to what David talked about. If you want to reach out to him, maybe there's something you'd want to talk about, you can do that as well on the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 164. So thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful. I know it wasn't an easy listen, but I hope it was helpful for you and your ministry. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.